Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Meeting Protocol Monthly Podcast, where we chat with some of the coolest people in the business and bring you useful and relevant information about what is happening in the world of meeting planning. I am Dora Figueredo, the head of events and education at Meeting Protocol, coming to you, as always, from my living room in New Jersey. The way I see it, field marketers wear multiple hats, or at the very least, a dual-sided hat, one that's engaged in a deep understanding of and brand building for the customer, and the other that has to be a pro at planning and executing events. Increasingly, many event professionals are having to do all of this as well, but I would argue that field marketers have always been expected to fuse together an expertise in marketing and brand strategy and lead generation, as well as logistical considerations for events. Whereas folks who are event planners who are more logistics focused, like me, haven't really had to think as much about the marketing and brand strategy in a really strategic sense. Like, I know for me, I have to obviously understand the brand strategy and the brand when I do events for my organization. But generally speaking, like, my marketing team gives me what I need to do, or they design the booth, or they create the materials. But I think that a field marketer kind of has to do both of those things. So with that in mind, I'm excited to introduce everybody to Lindsey Sacco today, who is a field marketing expert with deep experience specifically in the technology industry. So thank you so much, Lindsey, for being with us today. Tell us where you're joining us from and the background of what got you into field marketing and events.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dora. Thanks for having me. So I am joining you from my apartment in Astoria, Queens, New York. My little kind of nook in between my kitchen and living room. And what got me into field marketing and events. So when I was in college, I did study communications, and I kind of always had a feeling that I wanted to go into the comms, marketing, advertising world. And my first couple of experiences out of school were more digital advertising, research, data, kind of banner trafficking focus, much more technical. And I was really drawn to the teams that were working on the kind of more creative campaigns, both events, things that incorporated social, more bigger brand strategy, brand plays. So I found a field marketing role that was posted in my college alumni group on LinkedIn. And it was a temp to perm position. It seemed like a great learning opportunity. And I applied, and luckily I got it. And that was my first kind of entry into the event world. It was very heavy of like on the job learning. And that set me up for future opportunities and experiences in field marketing.
Great. Awesome. When you and I first spoke a few months ago, you mentioned that field marketing is sometimes interchangeable with events marketing or experiential marketing. So, we've talked about experiential marketing on this podcast before, but I would love to hear from you. Like, what is at the core of being a field marketer and what makes it different from other events and marketing positions?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say all of my field marketing roles have really been focused on the same kind of three or four goals. And always, first and foremost, has been lead generation. So, working very closely with sales to help them kind of get in front of those qualified prospects. So, kind of filling their pipeline. And then followed by brand awareness and kind of establishing the company and senior staff as thought leaders in the industry, in the space, as well as relationship nurturing with clients and prospects. So I think for field marketing, a major component has been sort of that in the field, like real life execution, where you're kind of getting the brand or company as well as their product or services in front of their audience directly, whether it's through in-person events, webinars, roundtables, different plays. But it's really kind of bridging that gap between, I think, your sales side and the audience that they're trying to speak to.
So I want to ask you a question that's a little bit in the weeds here. When you say nurturing, like, again, for me as a more logistics focused person, um, I don't necessarily have to think as deeply about that nurturing side with the clients.
Mhm.
Um, and so but you're not a salesperson necessarily. So how do you, I would love to hear a little bit more about what that part of the role is like.
The relationship nurturing.
Mhm.
That has been for me. I've worked on field marketing teams where I've been supporting teams that predominantly are focused on like existing clients. So I worked really closely with sales, but also the account management side. And some of the companies I've worked at, they've had a really established client base in one area. So the field marketing campaigns I'd be working on would have more to do with kind of just like nurturing the relationship, strengthening it, building that loyalty, making sure that we retain them and hopefully upsell at some point. So it's been kind of involving them in feedback with the product team, involving them in getting kind of like a sneak peek at the product roadmap, whether that's through like a virtual event or I've done a couple like coffee chats virtually where we talk through a new release coming down the line with kind of our key select intimate group of top clients and get their live feedback. Or kind of a little bit more like wining and dining, like taking them out for entertainment opportunities, and just letting them have time with their account managers face to face to continue to develop and strengthen that relationship. So it's, they have that kind of that recognition, that loyalty, that affinity to our brand or company, and they want to stick with us and grow with us.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have found that event planners are sometimes managed by people who have no idea what it's like to do their work. And I can think of one job in particular where my manager literally said, like, I don't know what your days are like. I don't know what you do all day.
Yeah.
Luckily, she trusted me that I was working all day and I was being productive. I wasn't just like, wasting company time.
Yeah.
But I do find that sometimes events folks are like a one man or a one woman team,
Mhm.
and they're given very little direction because it's unclear to the rest of their team what they're doing. So who typically manages a field marketer, and in an ideal world, what will your team structure be like?
Yes. So I've had a couple different experiences as well on the field marketing side, kind of depending on the company, the size, the resources. But ideally, and I think most often, I have, as a field marketing manager, reported into a director of field marketing or a VP of field marketing. And then generally, they kind of roll into the head of marketing or the CMO. I think at some companies, I have had the experience where there's been one kind of director, VP of marketing as a whole. So I think that can work, but just kind of depending on the size, it can be a lot if they're managing also, product, social, marketing ops, as well as field. So I think ideally, I have liked when I have been reporting into someone who is kind of focused on the same area that I'm working on. So I think that would be kind of the ideal structure, is kind of keeping field marketing aligned with field marketing specific leadership.
Got it. And who would feed into a field marketing strategy? Is that a combination of sales and marketing together, or?
Yeah, I think sales, probably first and foremost sales. So I really worked super closely with heads of regional sales, VPs of regional sales, as well as account management side. But because the role has been so focused on lead gen, bringing in those opportunities, hopefully closing deals, it has been a lot with the sales side. So talking through with them, what are their goals, what are their priorities for the quarter, maybe some key accounts that they're trying to get in front of, and then seeing how my strategy can align, and hearing their side too. What's working, what's not working, what would you like to see more of from marketing, maybe what's some like collateral that we could create that the team could leverage in their meetings. So when I've been crafting a strategy, I've worked really closely with the sales team I'm supporting. Also, definitely involving kind of senior marketing folks as well. But generally, after I would go to the sales team, kind of coming back working on a strategy or a year plan, and then presenting it to my marketing counterparts with kind of the evidence as this is what I heard from sales. So this is why I made this plan. And like, where do you see kind of any room for change, any feedback? So yeah, it's a combination of both.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah.
How do you help establish a company as a leader in their industry within
Mhm.
the parameters of your job?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different ways, but I personally have worked on a lot of like sponsored content opportunities. I think those have been great. In my background, being from more of the SaaS and ad tech space, it's been working with the publications like Ad Exchanger or Digiday, and doing a sponsored thought leadership article or a sponsored Q&A where I get to position kind of one of our senior staff members as the he's the interviewee, and they get to kind of tell our story, establish themselves as that thought leader from the company and that expert in this space. So I think then also we would usually like leverage that sponsored content through social, through email. So that's a resource that our team could have to share externally as well. So I think sponsored content works really well. It's a great way, I think, to kind of cast your message wide and far. I think speaking opportunities, getting on stage when you can at different events also helps. And also, virtual events too, leveraging someone senior as a speaker on a webinar. I think also just kind of knowing where your competitors are and being there too. So definitely if they're at a certain conference or they're participating in a certain way at a conference, seeing how you can also get involved and how you can participate. So, you're also kind of staying top of mind. You're also at the forefront of folks' mind for like players in that space.
Gosh, that was such a helpful answer. I
Thanks.
feel like if there's somebody going to be listening to this being like, oh, wow, yeah, great idea. I'm going to bring this to work. So
Yeah. Oh, I hope so.
thank you. With the understanding that you may need to anonymize this answer, could you talk about a successful field marketing campaign or plan that you have been a part of or that you've led and include things such as research you needed to conduct to develop the plan, how you determined your success, etc.?
Yeah. So I think for me, there was one field marketing plan in particular more recently that I was really proud of, which was I was supporting at this company, I was supporting our publisher department. So the team that was focused on like all the publisher accounts, and they did not have someone in the field marketing seat previously supporting their team. So it was kind of a new role to come into, and I think publishers traditionally don't really receive as much like TLC as the advertiser side, as the brands and
Yeah.
agencies. So I was kind of tasked with how can we create a field marketing plan for the publisher side? What are things that we can do for them to kind of build those relationships? Again, this was also a company where a lot of those folks were already clients. So it was more kind of opening up their eyes to potential upsell, new products, contract extension, things like that. I came back with a plan that was a mix of virtual and in-person activations. And my first one being kind of like it was a coffee chat where we sent out like a code for Starbucks. Join us online. We're going to kind of talk through this upcoming release. We're going to have the head of product on. You can give your feedback live, and we picked sort of our top 20 to 30 publishers to do this with. And that was the kind of the first step in my plan. And they really loved it. The feedback was great. They were kind of like, this is wonderful. We love having the opportunity to feel heard and give our feedback and our experience and our advice and feel like the product team is taking it into consideration and implementing it. So there was a few things like that that were more educational in nature. We did like a publisher focused day where we introduced the audience to some new members of our internal senior team. We had some different members of the C-suite get up and go through a presentation. So it was just almost creating like a client advisory board of sorts, even though we didn't call it that. But it was kind of creating like an intimate, close knit group of our publisher community to come together and feel like they had a voice in what we were doing. And a lot of those individuals are long-term clients who, are kind of, they renew the contract every year. It was great for retention. They extend the contract, they grow it. So that, yeah, I think it was a pretty important play to kind of get more involved with them, get in person with them more, have them feel a little bit more of the focus shift to their side of the business versus the advertiser side. And we also included in that year plan some different like social and hospitality activations that I really loved, like a suite at the US Open, and like a women in media tech publishing happy hour during ad week. So we had these really fun experiences where we tried to make them super unique and elevated, and kind of like small group to just express our appreciation towards them. And it was great. I heard just so much wonderful feedback from the pubs and from the internal reps, and a lot of even individuals that they had a hard time kind of getting in on meetings regularly. They saw a shift in that kind of interaction where they were more interested in talking, and like the attendance went up, they were more present. So yeah, I think for that, the way we started was kind of just pulling like information on who are our like top performing pubs, where are they, and how can we kind of deepen that engagement with them.
That's excellent. I love it. And that's like, I feel like my biggest takeaway. I have a few takeaways from what you just said, but one of my bigger takeaways is like showing just a little bit of TLC to them really
Mm-hmm.
made all the difference in that relationship, it sounds like.
Yeah. And then they're more willing to introduce the reps to other people they know in the business. Like, oh, like actually, like I know someone who works at Hulu or XYZ that they would be really interested in this offer. Like, let me set up a meeting for you. So it definitely opened doors for the team.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so event planners sometimes struggle with defining event objectives and ROI metrics to report on later.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for this struggle? How have you overcome some of these metrics hurdles?
Yeah, I think ROI reporting and tracking is always a bit of a challenge. I think everywhere I've gone, it's always been a little bit of a pain point. I think that's because when you're looking at lead generation, it's pretty clear cut, black and white of tracking that, whether or not it worked. Okay, is this opportunity, did we create an opportunity, did a meeting get booked, is the conversation progressing? But when you're doing something and it maybe is a bit more of like a brand awareness play, that's a lot more like abstract and vague to kind of report back on, and like how do you really measure brand awareness sometimes. So I think my I guess sorry, you were asking my advice for folks kind of dealing with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think always working really closely with sales, kind of like staying on top of them post campaign. So, making sure, first of all, you have it. You're looking at the registrants, the attendees, the no-shows, those who were engaged, and keeping that tracked somewhere, whether it's like Salesforce, HubSpot, whatnot. That's always been super important in my positions. And then staying on top of sales, talking to them regularly, checking in. Hey, I saw like you had this opportunity based off of contact made at X event or at, with X initiative. How's that going? Like, how is that progressing? Can you give me an update? Let's make sure that we also like keep that tracked in Salesforce or HubSpot so we can see like how that is hopefully progressing. So I think that it really takes alignment with sales and their involvement as well. And then I think sometimes for the like more vague brand awareness plays or even like the relationship nurturing, I've looked at like engagement numbers, like people who are actually signing up to come to our webinars or people who are downloading our content. And I've used that as kind of a benchmark for, okay, well, I think this is an increase in brand awareness because we're getting more people involved. And the nurturing again, like if people are responsive, are they coming to another event, are they like interested in participating with us again? So those you might not have such like firm stats on, but I think that's another way to kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Once again, another answer that is a little bit like a professional development. So thank you
Yeah, oh,
for
thanks.
that. Um, so I've just got a few more questions. This has
Yeah,
been
sure.
a really interesting conversation. Thank you for all of your excellent advice.
Oh,
Um, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced as a field marketer? And I don't know, I want to say, how have you overcome them? But I think in some cases, maybe you haven't overcome something. Like, what have been some of your learnings or things that even you're working through?
yeah. I think, reporting has always been kind of a bit of a struggle, so I can relate to everyone else dealing with that. I think proving kind of your ROI and your impact on the business, proving the value to sales, getting their buy-in to field marketing, um, can be challenging at times. But I think, persistence, continuing to plan these different activations and kind of just like prove that they're working, getting, I think, like customer testimonials or like attendee testimonials sometimes is really helpful too. Like there's been times where I've saved after an event, someone has sent an email, just like thanking me for the opportunity or the time or the experience. We had such a wonderful time. Our team loved it. We hope to see you guys again. Things like that, where, okay, it might not be a hard number that we're going to see in Salesforce, but it's like a nice anecdote to save and share with the sales team and the marketing team later on to be like, well, this is impact and this is value that we influenced. So yeah, definitely reporting ROI, proof to sales has always been a little bit challenging. I think otherwise, some of my roles have been more like event logistic, vendor involvement heavy, and some have been less so. But just kind of, I guess, the wild and woolly things that can come up with events, orders not showing up on time or entertainment, like something being wrong with like your AV, all the crazy things that can kind of happen at events. So I think being able to kind of know how to react, having like a supportive experiential team has been super helpful for me in some of those like high stress panic moments
Mm.
on site where you're kind of like, okay, we got to like move and move fast. So yeah, those are some things that have been challenges that I've faced in kind of the field marketing and event world.
Yeah, makes sense. For me, reporting is always a challenge. At my previous job, I was actually very good at it, but we
Mhm.
had pretty clear-cut events. We were not a sales-focused organization, um, but the types of events we put on, it was very easy to collect feedback about them,
Yeah.
and about how impactful they were for the attendees. But
Yeah.
since I've left that job, everything else I've done, I've really struggled because it was so clear-cut in that job. I was like, why isn't
Yeah.
it still clear-cut here? Um,
I know. And
so
then there can be this gray area, and you're like, well,
right, right. I mean, one of the things you just mentioned was how many people are signing up for the webinars. And so
Mhm.
I would actually love to know, this seems to be sort of like a perennial question in the events industry. Like for you in general, what is a good attendance to registration ratio for specifically a webinar? Because people are like, free webinar, let me sign up, and they never go to half of them.
Yeah.
So in
Right.
your experience, what has been a pretty a number that you'd be happy with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's true because you have so many people sign up where you can have these, crazy registration numbers, but then actual tune-ins are much, much smaller. I think a lot of people, I mean, I'm even guilty of it. Like I'll sign up and think, oh, well, I probably won't go, but I'll listen to the recording later. So I just want to
Yeah.
sign up so I can like get that in my inbox and then I'll listen to it on my own time. But I know I'm trying to think back to, I haven't had my hands in webinars directly in a while. But I think a lot of times we would see probably, maybe like a quarter of the registrations actually tune in, and we'd be fairly happy with that. I think because we're hopeful that people are signing up to get the recording, and that they will engage with the content at some point. But yeah, I think as long as we had uh, at least a healthy amount on the line to take part in the conversation live, to answer, or I mean, ask questions during the Q&A. Yeah, webinars are definitely a tricky one as well. And I think like there was such an influx of them with COVID. Um, and now I think it's kind of dialed down a little bit. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
universal, but I feel like I have seen a little bit less of webinars taking place versus like in 2021.
I completely agree. Yes.
Yeah.
There's definitely been a dialing down, and there's always like a knot in my stomach when I'm ready to open it up for Q&A. Like, is anybody
Yeah.
going to ask a question? So, you always have
Right.
to come with a few prepared of your own just in
Exactly.
case.
Yeah. You have to have those like plug questions ready.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just pretend, oh, Nancy from Colorado wants to know.
Right.
Like,
Right. That's true. And I received a question anonymously.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
At my last job, we sort of had a saying like, be okay with uncomfortable silence, because
Mhm.
sometimes, you know, you say, anybody have any questions? And then 4 seconds later, it's like, dead silent, and you're like trying to fill that space. But
Yeah.
we would sometimes allow silence for a minute or more, and somebody's always going to break the silence. It was extremely rare that nobody would ask a question. But if you're
Yeah.
silent for like 30-40 seconds, somebody will ask a question.
Somebody will. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's brave. I don't know if I could handle sitting there for a full 60 seconds. Like, okay, come on. I think yeah, a lot of the webinars I have gone in with kind of those pre-prepared questions where I'll just, give it a couple minutes of, oh, wow, we have one already,
Yeah.
But it's also, I think if you do them, if you pre-record the webinar and then
Mhm.
you kind of broadcast it, make it look live, I think that takes like a
Yeah.
lot of the pressure off as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, we are down to our closing question. What's the coolest event that you've ever been to, either as an attendee or a producer?
Oh wow. Let's see. That's a very good one. I think I have to give a nod first to a lot of the tech companies I've worked at have put on incredible like all staff sales kickoff type of events where it has been this out of world production where they bring a global team together somewhere like Barcelona or Croatia or crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I probably should put a disclaimer. I've also worked for a lot of European companies, so that could be why too, that it's been these international destinations. But and then just there's usually been a team dedicated to the production of that kind of internal event. And really the thought and detail that went in to make it such a special experience for everybody, from the interactive like scavenger hunts as a team to the like dance parties and the DJs and the catering and like the promo items, the swag. It's like they've thought about everything down to the last detail and really created meaningful experiences for their employees. And those are memories that I'm going to have forever. And like I still think back on and look at pictures of those different kind of all team kickoffs, bonding trips, and just they were just really wow moments where I was like, how lucky am I to work at a company like this? So those I think have been some of the top ones. And then I guess from my own experience, I mentioned quickly like the US Open suite that we had some of our publisher audience at one of my previous companies. That was also really cool. I had never been to the US Open. So it was a great experience for me personally as well. But we had a private suite. We were there all day and night. We did like a series of day matches and night matches. We got clients and prospects involved. So there was a really nice like interaction going on there between folks who were like, well, I've worked with the company for X years, and people being like, well, we're just like new and starting conversations. So it was nice to kind of have that live like case study in front of them to be like, oh, okay, maybe this is a good idea to partner with this company.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had like the signature drinks, the like different series of caterings. We had like tennis themed gift bags for everybody. We had like the visors out there with the company logo, and we actually partnered with Ralph Lauren and had someone come in and do on like an iPad, customize your own US Open 20, I think it was 2023 or 2022, like swag where you could get embroidered with something special. You could pick like what piece of swag you wanted, what like design you wanted on it, and then like what was your embroidery. Did you want it to have like your name or the year, anything you wanted? So like people thought that was really impressive, and I was like, oh yeah, this is super cool that we can kind of offer this experience within an experience. So yeah, I remember at the end of that day just kind of looking back and being like, this was like an incredible event. Everyone had such a wonderful time, and it was just something that you're probably not going to get to do otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think that is a major sell for folks too, when you offer them an event experience that it's like once in a lifetime. Like they're probably not going to get to have a chance to do that on their own. I
Right.
think that really makes it memorable and makes them want to like come back for more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I love that. I personally have never been to the US Open, but I have a couple of friends who have done sort of side events associated with the US
Mm.
Open. And they said it's basically like a big party all day.
Yeah, yeah, so much fun. I know now it's made me want to go back in future years. I'm like, oh, maybe I can get a ticket or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
also I want to note the first part of your answer about team retreats, and
mhm.
because so the answers that I normally get for this question are more along the lines of your US Open
Oh yeah, yeah.
answer, because like special unique events. One time somebody mentioned a bike race event that happens in Oregon every year, downtown Portland, I guess. They like
Okay.
close off the city. They say it's like they do a really great job of making it feel really cool. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't think anybody has ever mentioned a team retreat
Really?
and how special that can be. But I'm so glad you said it. And actually, for those of you who want to check out earlier episodes, episode 21 was with Diana Diller, who is a team culture building expert. And she talks
Mhm.
like the whole episode is about how to make your workplace better and how to make better team retreats.
Nice.
So I'm so glad you mentioned it, because she was just a recent guest. And I think that folks forget how important that internal culture is. And
Yeah.
like that is a really important event to plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so much respect for the kind of like culture teams, employee advocacy teams that focus on those internal events, because it seems like it's a ton of work. And they put a lot of thought and effort into it and come out with these like wonderful experiences. So yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
great.
There's like a fine line to balance between getting to know your teammates better and being excited to be with them, and also like not getting too touchy-feely
Yeah.
and having a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to folks whose specialty is in team retreats and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, because I do think that's a niche that doesn't get enough love in our
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
They're great.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. I'm so grateful for your time and for your best practice advice. Truly, this was excellent to hear from you today.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
yeah, no problem. We are going to link to your LinkedIn in our
Okay.
newsletter and in our podcast notes. So, for those of you listening, if you want to connect with Lindsey, feel free to check out our newsletter in July of 24, as well as the notes in the podcast and in Spotify. So, thanks again, Lindsey.
Thank
And
you.
Yeah, and thank you to our listeners and Meeting Protocol fans for checking out this episode. Don't forget to go to meetingprotocol.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter that includes links to all of our new podcasts, a CMP tip of the month, and tons of resources for all things related to meeting professionals and CMP.